The night Emily moved in did not feel calm or ordinary. It felt heavy with things no one said out loud. And Claire sensed it the moment her sister stepped through the door with one suitcase and a tired smile that tried too hard to look normal. Emily had always been the bright one, the sister who laughed easily and believed life would work out. But now her eyes looked careful, like someone who had learned that plans could break without warning. The house in a quiet American suburb, once steady and predictable, suddenly felt different, as if it was holding its breath. Mark stood a little behind Claire, watching quietly, already understanding that this was not just a visit, but a turning point. Emily explained quickly that her relationship had ended, her job was gone, and she needed time to stand again, speaking fast as if slowing down might let the pain catch her. Claire listened, nodding, offering hugs and reassurance. Up. Inside her chest something tightened, not from jealousy or fear, but from responsibility. Because inviting her sister into her marriage felt like opening a door that could not easily be closed. Mark picked up Emily's suitcase without being asked and carried it to the spare room. His movements calm and respectful, showing care without asking for attention. The spare room itself was simple, clean, and quiet, a place meant for short stays, yet now it felt like the center of something larger. As Emily settled in, thanking them too many times, Claire noticed how Mark kept his distance, standing back, speaking kindly but briefly, already sensing lines that needed to be protected. That evening, after Emily went to shower, Claire and Mark stood alone in the kitchen with the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. And Claire realized she needed to speak before her thoughts became fears. She told Mark that Emily was fragile, that she needed safety, not confusion, that the house needed peace more than anything. She asked him, carefully but firmly, to be kind to Emily while keeping a clear distance, to avoid closeness that could turn into misunderstanding. Mark did not argue or question her words. He simply listened, his face serious, and then nodded, promising without drama that he would do exactly that. There was something grounding in the way he agreed, as if he understood that love sometimes meant restraint, not emotion. Later that night, as rain tapped against the windows and the house settled into sleep, Claire lay awake thinking about how quickly life could change and how fragile balance really was. She wondered if inviting Emily in would bring healing or quietly test the strength of her marriage, but she trusted Mark. And that trust felt like the only solid thing she could hold on to. In the spare room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the unfamiliar walls, hearing the low voices of her sister and brother-in-law through the house, and feeling both grateful and ashamed for needing help. She promised herself she would not be a burden, that she would heal quietly and move forward, unaware that simply being there was already changing the emotional shape of the home. Down the hall, Mark stood by the bedroom window for a moment before joining Claire, looking out into the dark street, understanding that from this night on, every small choice would matter. The house fell silent, but under that silence were questions, boundaries, and quiet promises. And none of them yet knew how deeply those promises would shape what came next. Asterisk life inside the house changed quickly, and the days began to move with a new rhythm that felt unfamiliar but steady. As Emily tried to rebuild herself piece by piece without drawing attention to the cracks, she woke early, made coffee quietly, took long walks through the neighborhood streets lined with maple trees and parked cars, using movement to calm her thoughts. Claire returned to work, trusting that time would do what words could not, while Mark adjusted his routines without making it obvious. Leaving earlier, coming home later, and keeping his presence calm and controlled. Emily noticed this balance right away, how Mark was always kind but never close, how his words stayed polite and his tone steady, and how he never lingered in a room if she stayed too long. It was not cold, but it was clear, and that clarity made Emily both grateful and uneasy. One afternoon, when rain canceled her walk, Emily found herself alone with Mark in the kitchen, the quiet stretching between them as she gathered the courage to speak. She thanked him for letting her stay, for carrying her suitcase, for making space without complaint. Her voice sincere and soft. Mark listened, nodded, and replied simply that family helped family. Nothing more, nothing less, and then returned, too, rinsing his coffee cup as if the moment had already passed. Emily smiled, but inside her chest something stirred. Not attraction, but awareness. A recognition of care that asked for nothing back. When Claire came home that evening, she sensed a shift she could not name, a quiet tension that did not feel dangerous but felt important. At dinner, the three of them sat around the table, talking about small things, jobs, weather, and plans, yet emotions moved under the surface like a slow current. Mark reached for Claire's hand under the table, squeezing gently, grounding her, without drawing attention, and Emily noticed, lowering her eyes to her plate, understanding the message without words. As the days passed, Emily began helping more around the house, cooking simple meals, folding laundry, and keeping busy to avoid sinking into old sadness. Mark continued doing exactly what Claire had asked, never stepping beyond his role, never. Offering comfort that might blur lines even when Emily looked tired or lost. One evening, Emily stayed up late working on job applications, and Mark passed through the living room on his way to bed, offering a brief word of encouragement before moving on, leaving Emily alone with both hope and disappointment she could not fully explain. Claire watched all of this quietly, noticing how carefully Mark protected their marriage, how his actions spoke louder than reassurance, and she felt both relieved and challenged by her own thoughts. She realized that what she feared was not betrayal, but change, and change was already happening in small human ways. Emily, meanwhile, struggled with her own emotions, feeling thankful for safety while fighting the fear of being unwanted or invisible. She reminded herself that this was not her life, only a place to rest, and she promised herself she would not stay long enough to cause discomfort. One morning, as Claire rushed out the door, Emily asked if she could help more, wanting to prove her value, and Claire smiled, telling her healing came before usefulness, a truth Emily was still learning. Mark overheard this and said nothing. But later that night, he told Claire quietly that she was doing the right thing, that Emily needed patience, not pressure. That moment stayed with Claire, making her see Mark in a new light, not just as her husband, but as a man who understood emotional limits and honored them. By the end of the week, the house felt calm on the surface, yet filled with unspoken understanding, as each person carried their own thoughts in silence, moving carefully around one another, knowing that something fragile was being tested, and that how they handled these days would shape what came next. Time moved faster as winter edged closer, and the house settled into a quiet routine that felt stable but emotionally charged, as if every small moment carried weight. Emily began to change in noticeable ways, waking with more purpose, fixing her hair before breakfast, and speaking with a little more confidence as she applied for jobs and scheduled interviews. Claire supported her without pushing, offering encouragement while giving space, sensing that Emily needed to find strength on her own. Many evenings, the sisters sat together on the couch, sharing memories of childhood, old mistakes, and dreams that once felt too big. Their conversations soft but honest, helping Emily release pain she had kept hidden. Mark stayed mostly in the background during these moments, respectful and distant, giving them privacy without making it obvious. and Claire started noticing how carefully he followed the boundaries she had asked for. One night, after a long day, Emily went to bed early, emotionally drained but hopeful, and the house grew quiet except for the ticking clock. Claire sat alone for a while, thinking, replaying small scenes in her mind, and slowly realized something unexpected, that Mark's distance was not just protection for Emily, but a sign of deep respect for her. When Mark finally joined her, she asked him gently why he stayed so guarded, and he answered honestly that he wanted to keep the home steady. That emotions could grow in silence if people were careless, and he refused to let that happen. His words were calm, not defensive, and they struck Claire deeply, because she understood that what she saw was not emotional distance, but discipline rooted in love. She felt a wave of emotion, realizing that she had worried about the wrong things. And that trust was being proven daily in quiet ways. The next morning brought a turning point when Emily knocked on Claire's door with a composed expression and said she felt ready to move forward. Not rushed, not forced, but ready to build something new. She spoke about interviews, about finding her own place soon, about standing on her own again, and Claire hugged her tightly, proud and relieved, knowing this moment mattered. Emily spent the day organizing her things, cleaning the spare room, folding clothes with care, treating her stay like a chapter closing instead of a failure. While packing, she paused often, reflecting on how the house had held her during a fragile time, how kindness without pressure had helped her heal. She noticed Mark and Claire moving together in quiet understanding, sharing looks instead of words, and she felt grateful for the example they had shown her about boundaries and commitment. Later, Emily thanked Mark for respecting her space, saying his calm behavior helped her feel safe without feeling dependent. And Mark simply wished her well, proud in a quiet way that did not seek praise. That night, the three of them ate dinner together, lighter than before, laughing naturally, the tension replaced by relief and hope. Claire felt something shift inside her, a deep sense of gratitude for how the situation had unfolded, not perfectly, but honestly. She realized that love was not always about dramatic gestures or emotional intensity, but about choosing restraint, understanding timing, and protecting what mattered most. As Emily went to bed for one of her final nights in the house, she felt at peace, knowing she had not caused harm, only growth. Claire and Mark sat together afterward, sharing the silence, aware that they had passed through a quiet test without breaking, and that the choices they made during this time would stay with them long after Emily moved on. Asterisk after Emily moved out, the house felt empty in a way that was both strange and comforting, as if it had been holding its breath for weeks and could finally exhale. The room smelled faintly of her presence, the small traces of her belongings still tucked away. Kay and Claire walked through the house, noticing how quiet it had become without disruption, without constant adjustments or careful steps. That evening, she and Mark sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, the sky fading to deep blue. And for the first time in weeks, Claire allowed herself to feel the weight of relief mixed with love. She turned to him and thanked him quietly, sincerely, for doing exactly what she had asked, for holding boundaries while showing care, for protecting both her sister and their marriage in a way that words alone could not convey. Mark shook his head slightly, smiling gently, saying that he had not done it because she asked, but because this marriage mattered to him. Because keeping their life steady and their love safe had always been his priority. Claire rested her head on his shoulder, feeling warmth spread through her. It's an emotional calm she had not realized she had been missing while focusing on Emily's arrival and needs. Later that week, Emily called with news of a job interview and spoke with a tone that was hopeful and determined. Her voice lighter than it had been in months, and Claire felt pride swelling inside her, realizing that her sister had regained independence without chaos or emotional strain. They spoke briefly, sharing small encouragements and laughter over old memories. And when the call ended, Claire noticed that Mark's hand was still in hers, fingers laced tightly, a silent reassurance that life could remain steady and love could endure small tests. That night, as they prepared for bed, Claire reflected on how much had happened in such a short time, how fragile emotions could be managed with patience, understanding, and careful attention. She realized that true love was sometimes quiet and unseen, measured not by dramatic gestures, but by consistent, thoughtful actions, by choosing restraint, and by keeping promises even when no one was watching. Mark, who had stayed calm throughout, understood the unspoken dynamics, and his commitment had not wavered, demonstrating that protecting what mattered most often meant doing nothing more than holding a line with care. Claire felt a rush of gratitude and admiration, not just for him, but for the way their life had balanced. How their marriage had emerged stronger after welcoming a fragile family member into their home. Even Emily's brief presence had taught them lessons about patience, kindness, and emotional intelligence, showing that love did not have to be dramatic to be powerful, and that sometimes stepping back was as meaningful as stepping forward. As the night deepened and the house settled, Claire and Mark sat quietly, listening to the distant hum of streetlights and the faint rustle of leaves outside, aware that the most romantic and enduring choices were often the ones made in silence, with no recognition or reward, simply because they were right. The experience had strengthened their bond, showing them that trust, respect, and understanding were the pillars that could hold any relationship through unexpected challenges. Claire realized that allowing Emily to move in had not weakened their marriage, but had tested it in a controlled way, and their ability to protect their home and each other without overstepping boundaries had confirmed the depth of their connection. By the end of the week, the house felt alive again, not with someone else's needs, but with the quiet intimacy of a couple who had faced uncertainty together and had emerged with confidence, trust, and renewed love. They knew that life would bring other challenges, but they also knew that their choices, careful and intentional, had created a home where love was secure, family was supported, and emotional growth could happen naturally. The final thought that lingered in Claire's mind before sleep was simple but profound. Sometimes the strongest love is the love that waits, protects, and honors promises. And in that quiet strength, every heart in the house had found a way to heal, grow, and move forward.